Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. So this week, my team gave me this really hard assignment. And the assignment was, Marty, just tell your story and be real. Now, I didn't know that I was unreal, but I'm going to be real with you today. And I am a woman with a past. And you don't live this long and go through as many things as I've gone through and not have a past. So I'll share a little bit of that with you. Anything you want to know, I am an open book just about. So I'm glad to tell you about that. You know, I'll start out by telling you I was born in the mountains of North Carolina. And it's a majestic place up there when you're very, very small. I lived there probably the first 6 years of my life. And I will tell you for sure that we were in poverty. It was an Appalachian area. It was a very sheltered area because a lot of people that lived where I lived were relatives of mine. They were cousins. They were this, that, and the other. So it was actually pretty nurturing too. But make no mistake, it was absolute poverty. It wasn't middle class. It was poverty. And, I've read a lot since then. I've done a little self-education. And one of the things I can tell you is that coming from poverty gives you an advantage in life. And I certainly came from that background. And the advantage that you get from that is you don't want to be in poverty for the rest of your life. And I've read statistically about people that make it out of, become financially free. And most of them came from poverty. Now, why is that? Why in the middle class expanding their wealth as much as people that came from absolute poverty? And I think because probably the middle class is somewhat comfortable, and they see that in their parents. They feel comfortable with that lifestyle. And when you're in poverty, when you age on up and everything, and you're not comfortable with poverty. So I think that people that come from a really humble beginning have an advantage. I had that advantage, so I count it as an advantage. When I was a child under 6 years old, both of my parents worked in a mill, if you can even imagine that. It was extremely, extremely poverty. And I would tell you a few more things about that, but you probably couldn't even believe it. So after that period of time, when I got into school, we moved to the middle part of North Carolina, the Piedmont area. It was a little town called Statesville. And then shortly after that, we moved to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I went to a lot of grade school and began high school in Winston-Salem. And that's an area, and actually we bought our first house. My father by that time was a truck driver, 18-wheel truck driver, and my mom stayed at home until she started to work in a hospital. So we still were not, if we were middle class, it was very, very low entry middle class. But the great thing about it is we owned a house. It was a little 3-bedroom, probably 1,000 square feet, 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. I was an only child. So we grew up, I grew up there with that kind of financial being. Now, one of the things that happened to me when I was growing up is I had a girlfriend, a couple of years older than me, and she lived right down the road from me. And her father was a tobacco farmer, actually, and doing quite well. He also built some houses, so he was a little bit of an entrepreneur. And so when I would go down to visit her, I would see a gorgeous house, 3 times as big as mine was, multiple bathrooms, which is a real big deal when you're in a family. And the first dishwasher I ever saw was at this house. So I saw that. And of course, we were just tight as thieves. We were really good friends. And it was hard for me when I moved away from there because my parents divorced when I was probably about 12 years old. And we moved back to the mountains. And at that point in time, it was a difficult time because it's just a difficult time for the child that goes through a divorcing family. And I'll share again, more than anybody wants to know, my father was an alcoholic. My mother was very a codependent personality. And I think I saw her as codependent from a very early age. And I said, she never drove a car. She never did the things that that an independent woman would do. And she was a lovely woman, and she really was the stable part of my life and taught me so much. But it took me years to figure that out, because believe me, when I was that 13, 14 years old, I didn't want to be anything like her, because to me, that codependent nature, I just wanted to be independent. So when we moved back up to the mountains of North Carolina after my parents got divorced, I left home at 15 years old. And I lived in the YWCA in Asheville, North Carolina. And I worked after school at a restaurant. And I made good money for a kid in high school. And I finished school actually in Parkersburg, West Virginia. So by that time, I'd been out on my own for 2 or 3 years. I had tried to go back to the home that I grew up with my mother, and she was remarried again, and believe me, that just did not work out. So that's what happened. And then, so coming from that kind of background, I didn't make good decisions early in life. And so I went through divorces, I went through the wrong choice in mates, and but the one great thing that happened out of that is I had 3 children that just were the shining star in my life, that I loved so very much, and they were such a joy to me and still are to this day. And all of them turned out really well, so I'm very proud of them all. But it put me in a position when I was 25, I had 3 children under 5, and really, what in the world was I going to do what was I going to do to give these children a better start in life than I had? And that was a driving force with me. So I thought, well, I said, I could go to school, I could do this, that, and the other, but I really wanted to achieve financially because what I had been through so far in life. And so I said, I'm going to try real estate. So I did. I got my license when I was about 26 years old. I was in the business by that time, and I did really well out of the gate. I did really well because I think one of the things you really need in energy in real estate is a lot of energy. And when you're young, you got a lot of energy. And even if you're older, if you take care of your health and you do things to promote energy, which is exercise, exercise begots energy. Eating correctly, which we all mess up with at times, begots energy. So I did that, and it was really good to me. And so through a series of events and other bad relationships I won't tell you about, I ended up in Raleigh, North Carolina. By that time, I had let my real estate license expire. And again, I was in poverty. I would say I was very low class. If I was in middle class, it was lower middle class. I lived in a mobile home off of Buffalo Road. Started out in a single wide in a mobile home. If you can imagine, you know where Buffalo Road is. It's northeast Raleigh. And so when that relationship wiped out, I'm all by myself again. And I said, what am I going to do? So I got back into real estate in this area. And again, I got back into it. By that time, honestly, life had worn me down a bit. And I had the self-confidence of maybe a grasshopper or even an ant. I did not have a lot of self-confidence. But I had 3 children that I loved and I wanted to provide a life for. So I got back into real estate. I built up my self-confidence that first year. And, since I'm supposed to be real, I'm going to tell you the truth. I probably earned about $40,000 the first year I was in real estate. Wasn't in real estate a whole year that year. The next year I doubled it to 80. The next year I went to 120. I remember these numbers. I don't remember the number of homes I sold. The next year I went to 180, and then after that I went to 220. And by that time I was doing really well. But remember, I had 3 children, and the taxed man cometh. So the first 8 years in real estate, I was behind on my taxes. And that is not a good position, puts you under a lot of stress. It makes you really, it just makes you really hurt because you're not making enough to pay your bills, pay your taxes, and move forward. So I always say that it was 8 years was a turning point for me, because when I was in real estate, 8 years, I actually started paying for coaching. And by paying for coaching, I got better at my craft. And one of the things in real estate I think anybody has got to have is faith. And because you don't get a check unless you sell something, and sometimes it seems like a long time between those checks, and it's scary. So it's fear. You know, the question is, are you going to have more fear, or are you going to have more faith? And during those first 8 years that I was in real estate, honestly, there were many times, I tell the story all the time, but it's the truth. I had a ring. It was a sapphire ring. And I would go down to Reliable Pawn Shop down in downtown Raleigh, and I would pawn that ring, and that ring would only give me $125, but it would give me enough to make it until the next commission check came in, when I was short between those. The only other form of credit I had, which turned out to be real helpful, was a long time ago, there was a gas station at the Sears that they had at Crabtree Valley Mall. And I had a $300 credit for gas. And that gas, that credit card helped me get through those first years. That pawn shop, that one ring that I owned, and the credit card on gas is what I made it through. And I made it through faith. And of course, during that time, I'm being real here, I found a church. And I found a church that spoke to me about faith, and it fed my faith. I was able to learn and grow, but I really had a lot of fear. And fear is something that is, you say, well, you can't have fear and faith, and I beg to disagree. You can have fear and faith, but faith will make you move forward even when you're fearful. And so that's what I learned to do. So in my little story there about me, you know, I think about when everybody asks me something, I say, I am a woman with a past. And it's not all pretty, but it made me the person that I am today. One of my first big breaks in real estate was actually came through a solicitor. You know, those of us that are in real estate, we get calls for somebody. They want to give us leads. They want to sell us leads. They want to sell us coaching. They want to do so many things. You just wish you answered the phone to talk to buyers and sellers as much as you answer the phone to talk to solicitors that want to sell you something. Real estate's a big industry that they want some of our money. And so I answered the phone one day, and I was in a heated rush. It was probably early 2000s. And the guy said, he talked to me a little bit, and I was very short with him. Actually, I was very rude with him because I'd talked to maybe 14, it felt like about 14 people that day that wanted to sell me something. And he talked to me about radio. And when he talked to me about radio, I wasn't that interested, but I said, to tell you how long ago this was, I said, well, fax me some information about it. So he faxed me the itinerary for what he was proposing on radio. And I read that, and I said, you know what, this will work. This will work. And I decided to take that chance. And I took that chance because I had, by that time, I had developed a little bit of my risk muscle. And I think that's what a lot of real estate agents forget to do, because they get in a position where they're finally making some regular sales. They feel like they're doing, but they're not growing by leaps and bounds. They're not really going 100% for all they can get through. They're just, maybe they're satisfied in that middle class. You know, I'm comfortable. I don't want to risk. So I'm comfortable where I am. And when you're comfortable where you are, I think there's something about being content, but you can be content and also have ambition. Ambition is not a bad word. It's a really good word when you're in real estate. So that was important to me. And one of the questions they told me to ask is, how do you create a personal brand? And I think you find your voice. I know social media now is such an outlet for people that have a talent for that love to be on video. To be blatantly honest with you, I don't like it at all. It's new to me. When I got in real estate, the way an agent promoted themselves is they put themselves in a homes and land book and had some houses there for people to call them about. But now everything's different. You know, everybody goes online about houses. You get fewer and fewer phone calls about your houses because people have got that information online. So how do you take a risk to develop your personal brand? Well, maybe you do it in video. Maybe you do it on Facebook. Maybe you do it on Instagram. You know, we could have a debate about TikTok, but now's not the time for that. But you've got to find a way to have your voice there and speak to the people that you want to speak to. And then it goes into forget how to really, that we forget, she says, this is one of the things I'm supposed to talk about, forget how to really connect with clients on a personal level. And I would tell you that in my story, when I first started out, those first 8 years of real estate, I did work with a lot of buyers. And frankly, it is a lot easier to connect with somebody when you've got them in your car. And at that point in time, we all got in the same car. The kids got in the car with us. When the kids are, you know, climbing over the seat and you're stopping and you've got juice and diapers in your trunk, because you've got relocation buyers and you're showing homes all day long with them, it's really easy to connect with a family like that because you're getting to know them. And that, I think it's easier to connect with buyers, period. When you switch over to listings, which I did, that was my career path, I switched over to working with listings. And in my personal record, which I've still have trying to get somebody on my team to beat that personal record. That personal record is I took 42 listings in 1 month. And that's because I focused like a laser beam on taking listings and building inventory, because I knew if I had a store and didn't put any inventory in it, I wouldn't get anybody to come in and buy anything. However, if I filled that store with beautiful homes, a lot of people would call me, they'd want to see them. And that would create buyers. And that's the reason probably I had one of the first teams that I know of in the Triangle area, because when I started working with listings, I started working with agents that would work with the buyers that called off my listings. And it was good for me. I found my voice on radio. I enjoyed that. But how to connect with people that you list a home with, number one, it's a shorter period of time you spend with those people. So it's a little bit more challenging to connect. One of the ways I like to tell people to connect is by really, really listening to the party that you're going to list their house. You're going to interview for the job of selling their home. And when you interview for that job, I know agents, I could name names, but I'm not going to, that walk in the door and start talking a mile a minute and don't stop until they walk out the door. And my approach is totally different. I want to know about this person that's decided to interview me for the job of selling their home. I want to know what their goals are. I want to know. Another one of my favorite things is, has a real estate agent wronged you in another life? And most of the time they do have a story to tell me, because I want to know what past experience they've had, what ideas they're coming into this business relationship with. I want to know about their goals, and I want to make it happen for them. And I've learned many things that I think help a seller make their home sale more productive, make more money. So how to establish trust with clients, I would say be a great listener. Listen intently and don't be thinking about the next thing you're going to say, because that's not important. What's important is what they want and how they want it to unfold, and then seeing how close you can come to their ideal home sale. So another thing they told me to talk about is how to use technology to enhance your communication and marketing efforts. Well, technology is CRMs, and you should definitely use a CRM. Honestly, they said to discuss my shortcomings. My shortcomings is not staying in touch with people. I've sold over 10,000 homes. I've even stopped counting. I don't know, maybe 15,000 homes by now. I've sold a lot of homes, but I've done a poor job of staying in touch with people, and that's the truth. I've sold many houses where the people moved out of this area, and I know agents that do that religiously, and they do a great job of it, and I admire those agents that are doing the correct thing. But I was all about, doing those numbers and getting that inventory up so that we would have a lot of interest from home buyers and home sellers. When other home sellers see you take a listing and do a fantastic job on that listing, they notice. And I think now, this year, more than ever, they're going to notice how you do on that. Do you do an open house that's mediocre? Do you do one that's consistent? I think there's many things that you can do right now to stand out in this market. But my message to you, and I've talked about 20 minutes now, and that's about my limit, so is just to have faith over fear, because the fear of taking a risk in this business can be awesome sometimes. And I tell you, if you read the headlines right now, you'd think the sky is falling in real estate. But I haven't seen it so. Actually, I've seen phones start ringing with January 23 on the board and everybody ready. So I know the numbers. I do read a lot of statistics about where we are on real estate. However, this is a great business with great opportunity for somebody that's got a lion's heart, that's got a lion's love for why they will go through the downside of this business as well. Just had somebody I talked with over lunch that was considering real estate. She said, well, tell me the bad side. And the bad side, of course, for me, when I was in real estate, is I never felt like I could take time off because I didn't have that regular check coming in. So I worked like a banshee. I remember having my 3 children in the car with me and being on I-85 going south. I think I was going to Hilton Head for a vacation, and getting a call from one of my clients who was going to be a relocation client. And that relocation client says, I've just got the best news. Says, we're going to get to come in early. We're actually coming in this weekend instead of 2 weeks from now. Now, I'm on the road with a vacation to my kids. Well, what did I do? What did you think I did? I turned around and I came back and I serviced that client because that was in the position I was in at that point in time. And this is a great business, folks. It's a great business for you to spread your wings and decide that you can actually grow beyond maybe what you experienced when you were growing up. So I hope it will be as good. I know it will be. It will be as good to you as it ever was to me if you have the faith to seize the opportunity. So I'm going to take this time now, just a few minutes, and I'm going to shut up, and I'm hoping y'all got something to say.
All right, first question here, Marti. So you talked about how to connect on a personal level with clients. Mm-hmm. How would you handle difficult clients who may not be as open to connecting with you personally?
Mm-hmm. Well, we've certainly had difficult clients, and I know, honestly, I've seen some very good agents just cut off communication altogether with that kind of client, and that's not the right thing to do. I was talking in my sales meeting last week about going with a family member to a cancer hospital. And I said, these are professional medical people, doctors, nurses, this, that, and the other. Occasionally they have a very difficult client, a very difficult patient. Now, do they stop servicing that patient? Of course not. They don't do that. They retain at least enough self-dignity to not react. When you start showing your emotions, when a client shows their emotions to you, you do not react with your emotions. Let me say that again. That's very true. And I was able to do that. Now, it's harder as a team leader for me not to react to somebody that's slamming one of my agents. Now, I'll just be honest with you there. It's a little bit harder, especially because I know my agents really well. I've worked with them most for a long period of time. And if somebody calls me up and tells me something opposite of what I know to be true, it's harder for me to retain my non-emotional, business-like approach, but I do it. So that's what you gotta have. You gotta have a little bit of healthy distance while you're doing the deal. You know, you can become bosom buddies after the deal is done, but when the deal is being done, either during the listing period or during the buying period when they're going through escrow, I don't think you ought to try to have a friendly relationship. I think you ought to have a personal relationship, and then after that point in time, certainly develop that friendly relationship if that's your disposition. So that's my answer. What else? I hope there's something.
Got a couple more here. I don't know if they are specific to this. We might have to do another whole seminar for these questions. But the first one, how do you make buyers and sellers comfortable with dual agency, or do you refer the buyer leads on your listing?
I refer buyer leads. But there was a time when I just treat everyone fairly. So I don't have a problem with dual agency. I don't have a problem with that. But now, if you've got somebody that brings that up, we're in a different society now. You can easily do dual agency, and then what's the other one? I'm drawing a blank. I know y'all know what I'm talking about. But that's what I would do. I would offer them dual agency and designated agency. It came to me. Offer them designated agency. And that way you've got that distance. You've got that you're not talking to that. Maybe if you're doing another deal within the office. But you know, the truth of it is dual agency could be, if a company that you work for, let's say a Caldwell banker has got more than one office, and you work with another Caldwell banker that's got the same owner, you're actually working dual agency then, and most buyers don't know it. So I think it's a lot of that is the mistrust that our society is going to, and as just to be blatantly honest with you, I think people from certain regions have more of that distrust than others. But if you're open and honest with people that you're dealing with, whether they're a buyer or seller, you'll be the person. I believe they can see and feel that trustworthiness in you. So that's my answer.
All right, this is another one that could be a whole new seminar, but the question is, how do you cut through the noise of social media and the constant barrage of static marketing in order to reach our buyers and sellers?
Well, I think you got to really think passionate about something. You know, I'd like to do a video about, I'm pretty passionate about iBuyers. And I think some of the damage that they brought to our market. So I'm passionate about home ownership. I'm very passionate about everybody deserves to be in a home. Hardworking families deserve to be in the home. So when those interest rates rise up or something that hinders them, something that threatens home ownership, it kind of gets to my heart, because buying a home, I remember when I was going through bought a home, I fixed it up, and I moved to the next home. I buy that home, I fixed that one up, and moved to the next one. So I'm very passionate about that. So I think to find your voice and to cut through the chase, you got to find something. What part of real estate just makes you very passionate? I'm probably going to do video as soon as I write it on just a little bit more of the damage that I think iBuyers have given our home owners, because iBuyers they're not like you as an agent or me as an agent. They don't represent that homeowner. They represent an investor. And I think it's probably the biggest bait and switch in the world when somebody calls an iBuyer out. The iBuyer gives them a ridiculously low offer. At least they're smart enough not to take that low offer. And the agent that's come out that represents the iBuyer says, "Oh, that's okay. We'll just list it for your price." I call that bait and switch. So I'm not fond of that practice. So even though we do investment homes, even though I've bought homes as an investment, I want it clear that we're going to give lower than market value. And I don't think you're hearing that. Or when you're hearing their advertisement, you're hearing, I'm going to give you the best cash offer in the industry. Well, the best cash offer in the industry is probably 70% right now, maybe 75 on a good day, because every iBuyer has gone down on what they're getting. So find out what you're passionate about. Get on video about that. I think video is a good way to cut through the noise, but be passionate about what you're talking to those buyers and sellers about. All right, guys. I think I've about tapped out today. I thank you so much for coming by. You can text me anytime. I'd love to talk to you about real estate, your career, where you want to take it. It's just a joy to be with you every week. So hope to see you again next week. Take care.